Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
Let's dive in, because this one has been festering inside me for months. A wound I didn't even know was there until it started to scar over in unexpected ways. It started with a forgotten coffee mug, not some explosive argument that shatters the air like thunder. Not a caught-in-the-act betrayal that plays out like a bad thriller with dramatic music swelling in the background. No, it was just a Tuesday evening in our cozy, but increasingly claustrophobic suburban home, the kind with white picket fences outside and unspoken resentments within. Sarah's lipstick stain was still fresh on the rim of the mug, a bold red that used to make me smile, but now just reminded me of how distant we'd become. She'd left it on the kitchen counter haphazardly, right next to the sink, where I was scrubbing the remnants of dinner, while she typed away furiously on her laptop at the dining table, her fingers dancing across the keys, as if they held the secrets to the universe or at least to her next promotion. She asked if I had seen her charger, her voice casual, almost absent-minded, not even bothering to look up from whatever urgent email or chat was captivating her more than the man standing 5 feet away. In that mundane moment, as the soapy water ran over my hands, I realized with a clarity that hit like a cold wave, I was just background noise in her life. The guy who fixed the leaky faucet at 2 a.m. because she complained about the drip 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 interrupting her sleep. The one who remembered to pick up her dry cleaning on Fridays without fail, even when my own shirts piled up wrinkled in the laundry basket. The husband who nodded along patiently to her endless stories about office politics, her frustrations with colleagues, her triumphs in meetings without her ever once pausing to ask about my day, my dreams, or the quiet frustrations building in my chest like unspoken words in a sealed bottle. We'd been married for 7 years, high school sweethearts who turned into college lovers, and then into this routine. Towels had to be folded her way, tri-folded precisely. Edges aligned, or she'd sigh and refold them herself, as if my efforts were never quite right. Dinner was ready when she got home late from work, often with a glass of her preferred Chardonnay poured and waiting, because I knew it helped her unwind. But me, I was invisible, a convenient fixture in our 2-bedroom house, like the reliable coffee maker that brewed her morning joe without complaint. That mug, cooling in my hands as I stared at it, became the symbol of it all. She grabbed the charger I handed her. I'd spotted it tangled under the couch cushions earlier without a glance or a simple thanks. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen, fingers resuming their frantic typing. Something inside me whispered, soft but insistent, "Enough. You're done fading into the wallpaper, done begging for a scrap of attention in your own marriage." That night, as she slept with her back to me like she had 4 months now, her breathing steady, her form curled away as if even in dreams she preferred solitude, I slipped out of bed quietly. The moonlight filtered through the curtains we'd picked out together years ago, casting long shadows across the room that mirrored the ones in my heart. I sat in the living room with a notepad and a pen, the same one I'd used to jot down grocery lists or reminders for her appointments. The blank page stared back at me, mocking. What was there to say? I'm leaving because you don't see me anymore. Because our love turned into a checklist of chores. I wrote nothing. Why bother with words when actions, or the lack of them, had spoken volumes for so long? She wouldn't notice the note any more than she noticed the way I'd started eating alone in the kitchen, while she scrolled through her phone at the table. So I left without fanfare, without the cathartic slam of a door that echoes through Hollywood breakups. No dramatic exit scene. No passive-aggressive sticky note on the fridge proclaiming I'm done. Just my wedding ring, that simple gold band we'd exchanged with vows of forever, placed carefully on the kitchen table next to the unopened bottle of her favorite Pinot Noir she'd bought on a whim for a weekend getaway and promptly forgotten about. Like so many of our shared moments, I packed a duffel bag with essentials, clothes, my laptop, a few books that had been my silent companions during lonely evenings, and walked out into the cool night air. The door clicked shut softly behind me, a whisper of finality. I drove to a motel on the outskirts of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and anonymous rooms, and checked in under my own name, because who would come looking? That was the night I began to reclaim the pieces of myself I'd lost in the quiet erosion of our marriage. It's been 72 days now, each one a small victory in rebuilding. She's called 34 times, the phone lighting up with her name at odd hours late nights when she probably couldn't sleep in our empty bed. Early mornings when the house felt too quiet without my habitual coffee grinder whirring. Texted 60 to messages, a barrage that started with confusion, "Where are you? This isn't funny." Escalated to anger, "How dare you just leave like this?" And softened into "Please, please, Mark, I miss you. Come home." She even messaged me on LinkedIn once, which is ironic, because she always said social media was strictly for networking, not nagging. Yet here she was, using a professional platform for personal desperation. Her last text read, "This is ridiculous. You're being childish. Come home so we can sort this out like adults." Adults. The word stung. Now she wants to talk. Now that the laundry doesn't fold itself into neat stacks. Now that her car isn't magically serviced with oil changes and tire rotations I handled without prompting. Now that there's no one to listen to her vent about her boss's micromanaging or her co-workers' passive-aggressive emails without interrupting or demanding reciprocity. But I'm not going back. And the silence she's drowning in, the one where her calls go to voicemail, her texts remain unread. It's just the start of her reckoning with what she took for granted. I thought she'd move on fast, her pragmatic nature kicking in like it did with everything else. Replace me with some charming colleague from her marketing firm. Maybe that guy from her book club she mentioned too often, Alex, with his intellectual glasses, endless opinions on existential philosophy, and that easy charm that made me feel like a relic from her past. I pictured her bed warm with someone new within weeks, my side of the closet cleared out for his button-down shirts, the spice rack I'd organized meticulously during one of my quiet evenings of domestic desperation ranged to suit his tastes. Hell, I even imagined her posting subtle hints on social media, a new profile pic with a mysterious arm around her shoulder, captions about fresh starts and unexpected connections. But no, that's not what happened at all. Instead, she shattered, piece by piece, in ways I never anticipated. At first, it was all a carefully constructed facade, the kind she was so good at maintaining for her clients and friends. Her Instagram, which she'd always curated like a professional portfolio of happiness, lit up with posts that screamed overcompensation, her at a sunrise yoga class on the beach, grinning to wide under a filter that couldn't hide the strain in her eyes. Captions like "Embracing my truth, one breath at a time, and growth hurts, but it's worth it, here's to new beginnings." Performative bullshit, through and through. I know that smile all too well. It's the one she wore at family gatherings. The forced curve of lips that begged everyone around her to buy into the happy wife narrative, even when tension simmered beneath. The one that said, "Look how put together I am," while inside, everything was unraveling. I didn't reply to any of it, not her desperate pleas in the messages, not the barrage of missed calls that filled my voicemail with increasingly fractured versions of her voice, first accusatory, then bargaining, finally broken. Not even the Venmo request she sent for half the coffee maker you took, as if dividing assets could somehow divide the pain. I observed from afar, holed up in my temporary Airbnb in a neighboring city, not out of spite or a thirst for revenge, but out of a quiet curiosity. I needed to know how long it would take before the mask slipped, before the woman who prided herself on control admitted defeat to the void I'd left behind. Turns out, it didn't take long at all. One rainy afternoon, about 3 weeks in, I was grabbing takeout from our old neighborhood spot, a little Thai place where we'd had countless date nights that devolved into her checking work emails midway through pad thai. I had my hood up against the relentless drizzle, my steps hurried, when something pulled me toward the corner store across the street. Maybe nostalgia, maybe masochism. Through the fogged-up window, I spotted her in the aisle of teas and coffees, staring blankly at a shelf as if it held the answers to life's riddles. No makeup to mask the dark circles under her eyes. Hair thrown into a messy bun with what looked like my old hair tie, the one she'd always borrowed from my knit stand. She looked utterly adrift, her shopping cart half filled with random items, my favorite brand of granola cereal, which she hated because it was too crunchy, a jar of olives I used to snack on during movie nights we no longer had. Her shoulders slumped, her gaze distant, like a woman who'd forgotten why she was even there. Hollow, empty, a shell wandering through the routines we'd built together over years, now echoing back at her in solitude. I didn't approach. Instead, I slipped away unseen, melting into the crowd like the ghost I'd been in our marriage. But as I walked back to my car, rain soaking through my jacket, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt solid, not spectral, not a fading outline in someone else's story. I felt real, tangible, like the weight of invisibility had finally lifted. I hadn't told a soul where I'd gone after that night, not even my brother Jack, who lives across the country in Seattle and has a heart of gold, but a mouth that can't keep secrets, especially when it comes to family drama. I'd called him the morning after, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I need space, Jack. I'm okay. But if anyone asks Sarah, Mom, whoever, just say you haven't heard from me in weeks. He paused, concern evident even over the phone line, but he respected it. At least until Sarah showed up at his door unannounced, a ghost from my past crushing into his present. He called me in a frenzy that night, his voice low and urgent like he was in the middle of a spy thriller, whispering into the receiver as if she might overhear through the walls. Dude, she's here. Showed up on my doorstep sobbing. No coat despite the rain. Says she drove all day straight from home. Looks like hell, red eyes, disheveled hair. Found my address from an old birthday card you sent last year. The one with the family photo inside. I could hear her in the background through the phone. Her voice muffled, but pleading, soft and broken in a way I'd rarely heard. Please, Jack, just let me speak to him. I need to make this right, to explain everything. My heart twisted, a mix of vindication and unexpected pity. Explain what? Exactly. That I was her convenient emotional anchor until I slipped away unnoticed. That her clarity about our relationship only dawned when my toothbrush no longer sat beside hers, when the mirror fogged up from her showers alone. I told Jack firmly, don't tell her anything. Not where I am, not even the state. Just let her go. He sighed, the sound heavy with brotherly worrying. She deserves closure, Mark. And honestly, maybe you do too. This silence, it's eating at both of you. But closure, what a loaded word. I didn't crave some neatly wrapped ending with apologies and hugs. I craved peace, the kind of profound quiet that isn't laced with anticipation of the next late night arrival, the next sarcastic jab about my quiet nature that she disguised as teasing but felt like diminishment. The kind where I could go to bed without flinching at the sound of keys jingling in the door, wondering if it was affection walking in, was just more apathy, more excuses wrapped in I'm tired from work. Still, part of me softened, cracked open like a fault line, hearing how she'd driven through pounding rain and traffic snarls, barefoot in her grief, because she'd kicked off her shoes in a fit of despair midway, tears streaming down her face as she begged for a lifeline. Too late. You can't trample someone's soul for years, stepping over their needs like they're mere inconveniences, and then suddenly wail in surprise when the doormat decides to roll itself up and leave. She ended up crashing at Jack's for a night. He was too kind to turn her away completely, but firm enough not to let her inside the house proper. He gave her the couch on the covered porch, a mug of chamomile tea to calm her nerves, a spare blanket against the chill, but no more. No access to his phone, no probing questions that might reveal my whereabouts. The next morning, after a sleepless night where she reportedly paced and whispered to herself, she left a note tucked into his mailbox, her handwriting shaky and smudged with what looked like dry tears. He snapped a photo and texted it to me. You didn't let me apologize. Please, Mark, I know I messed up, but give me a chance to say I'm sorry. But apologies. She had endless chances in our marriage, every ignored conversation, every dismissed feeling, every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. Silence was my final, unflinching response, the only language left when words had failed us long ago. I swore off checking her online presence after that, blocked her on every platform to build a wall against the pull of old habits, told myself I was done, that healing meant moving forward without glancing back. But recovery's a zigzag path, not a straight line. Some days you're a survivor, striding confidently into new routines. Other days you're just a wound with legs, stumbling through the motions. One week evening, about a month in, I caved. Curled up in my sparse new apartment, a one-bedroom with bare walls and a view of a parking lot, I created a fake profile, typed in her name with trembling fingers, and there it was, a fresh reel posted just hours earlier. Her face filling the screen, eyes swollen and red-rimmed, no filter to soften the rawness. It was a 7-minute ramble, starting with her usual vulnerable act, the quivering lip, the downcast eyes glancing off camera as if seeking approval from an invisible audience. But this felt different, more unscripted, like she was confessing not to her followers or even to me, but to her own reflection in the mirror behind the phone. I think I lost the one thing that grounded me without even noticing it was slipping away, she said, her voice breaking on the last word, a hitch in her breath that echoed the cracks in my resolve. She paused, wiping at her eyes with the sleeve of what looked like my old college sweatshirt, the one she'd claimed as her own years ago. Then, quieter, you don't know you've stopped seeing someone really seeing them until their shadow's gone from your life. Silence. It hits harder when it's echoing back at you, filling every corner you thought was full. I froze, a tumult of feelings churning in my gut, vindication mixed with a sickening pity. She went on, her words tumbling out faster now. He was steady. Too steady for my chaotic world. I called it boring in my head, dismissed it as complacency, but it was strength all along. Steady people don't explode, they fade quietly. No fights that shake the walls, no scenes that leave scars visible to the world. They just dissolve into the background until they're gone. And I pushed him to it, with every ignored moment, every time I chose work over us. She reached for something off screen, her hand shaking slightly, and held up a photo our wedding day, the candid shot taken by a friend where we're laughing in the pouring rain outside the venue, her veil plastered to her face, my arm around her as we dashed for cover. It was the only picture of us that felt genuine, unposed, a snapshot of joy before life ground it down. If you're out there watching this, she whispered, tracing the edges of the frame with her finger, I don't deserve another shot. I know that now. Just be happy, Mark. Be seen by someone who appreciates your quiet strength. Be somewhere warm, somewhere that doesn't make you feel like you're disappearing. Don't vanish for good, please. For a second, my anger thawed, melting into something softer, almost nostalgic. But forgiveness, that's a bridge too far. It's easy to emote when you're alone in a quiet house. Easy to confess your sins when the damage is already done and irreversible. I'd endured her emotional void 4 years. Living in the silence, she doled out like it was normal. She was just beginning to taste its bitterness, to hear its relentless echo. Weeks passed without incident, or so I thought. I hadn't checked my mailbox in ages most days. I didn't care if bills or junk mail piled up, and the rest of the time, I convinced myself that no one important even had my new address. My temporary haven was a dingy loft in a bustling city 2 hours away, with walls cracking from age, furniture scavenged from thrift stores, and a view that overlooked nothing but alleyways and distant skyscrapers. It wasn't much, but it was mine, unshared, unjudged, and I didn't owe anyone the coordinates. So when I finally riffled through the accumulated envelopes, one lazy Sunday, my chest tightened at the sight of a plain manila one, no stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled in her familiar looping script, delivered by hand or courier perhaps. Inside, no lengthy letter spilling apologies or justifications, no dramatic plea scrawled in tear-stained ink, just relics from our shared past, each one a dagger wrapped in memory. A faded ticket stub from our first concert together, a indie band in a smoky venue, where we danced until our feet ached, her head on my shoulder during the slow songs. The edges were frayed, as if it had been clutched often, carried in a wallet or pocket like a talisman. A pressed rose from the bouquet I'd given her on our 3rd anniversary, the one she dismissed as sweet, but unnecessary at the time, preferring practical gifts like a new planner for her busy schedule, and a small USB drive, matte black and unassuming. I stared at it for what felt like hours, the weight of curiosity battling my resolve not to give her another platform, another stage to perform her curated sadness. But invisibility breeds a cruel hunger for validation, for answers, even when you know they might reopen old wounds. Plugging it into my laptop with hesitant fingers. It was audio, only no video to soften the blow. Background hum at first, the faint whir of a fan or distant traffic. Then her voice emerged, raw and unpolished, like a recording made in the dead of night without edits or retakes. "I'm not begging you to come back," she murmured, her tone laced with exhaustion, "because I know I don't have the right. But the quiet you left behind, it stings worse than any shout, any argument we never had. It fills the rooms, echoes in the hallways, reminds me every second of what I took for granted. I earned this silence, Mark, I know I did. Treated your loyalty like air, always there, never needing acknowledgement. Assumed no drama meant no issues. That our life was fine, because it was functional. God, I was so wrong." There was a long pause, filled with shaky breaths, the sound of someone fighting back sobs. Then, softer, "I see you now, in every empty space. Miss how you made me feel big, capable, without ever making demands. How you held everything together while I chased shadows." It cut off abruptly in static. No fade-out music, no scripted apology, just the abrupt end of confession, leaving silence in its wake. No tears fell from my eyes that night, but I didn't delete the file either. Instead, I sat there in the dim glow of my screen, holding the USB in one hand and the pressed rose in the other, its petals brittle and faded, wondering how long someone can live with regret before it swallows them whole, consumes their days and nights in a cycle of what-ifs, and whether I was finally free of mine, or if this was just another layer to peel away in the slow process of healing. I vowed after that to avoid any ties to the old life. That compliant, shadow-like husband was buried in the ruins of our marriage, belonging to a different city, a different heartbeat entirely. No more lurking on social media, no more second-guessing my decision. But life has this cruel sense of timing, doesn't it? Closure doesn't always arrive gift-wrapped with ribbons. Sometimes it ambushes you in the most ordinary places, like a late-night diner, where the fluorescent lights buzz overhead and the coffee tastes like regret. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday, and I was nursing a sad cup of black brew at the counter, staring into the steam if it held prophecies, when a familiar voice pierced the hum of the place. "Mark," it was Lena, Sarah's closest friend since college, the one who'd whisper behind my back that I was too passive, too loyal to a fault, but always beamed at me during group dinners as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She looked startled, not like she'd seen a ghost exactly, but more like she'd encountered a living embodiment of a decision she'd once supported, perhaps even encouraged in hush girl talk sessions. Her eyes widened, coffee cup midway to her lips. I nodded curtly, tried to brush past with a mumbled "excuse me," but she grabbed my arm gently, her grip insistent. "Wait, you just disappeared." Poof, gone. Everyone thought maybe therapy retreat, or rehab, or something worse. Rehab. The word landed like a slap. That's how far their rumors had spiraled to explain my sudden absence, painting me as the unstable one to absolve her of blame. I almost laughed, a bitter sound bubbling up. She lowered her voice, glancing around the near-empty diner as if spies lurked in the booths. "Listen, Sarah's a total mess. I didn't think she'd break like this, fall apart so completely. I warned her about being careless, reckless even, but she didn't listen." My throat went dry, a knot forming. Careless how? Reckless in what way? Lena blinked, that classic slip-up expression crossing her face, the one where words escape before the brain catches up, and there's no reeling them back. "She told you about the thing with Alex, right? The emotional stuff." I stared, unblinking, the world narrowing to a guilty flush. Backpedaling ensued. I mean, not Alex per se, just. She was lost, confused about everything. Needed clarity. It wasn't physical. She swore no cheating. Emotional support. That's all. She told you she didn't cheat, right? But her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, settling finally into unmistakable guilt. And just like that, in the greasy glow of a roadside diner, her entire house of cards, every plea, every tearful voicemail, every meticulously worded Instagram confession crumbled into dust. I wasn't crazy for suspecting those late-night book club meetings that stretched into the wee hours. I wasn't insecure for questioning the texts from Alex that she'd delete before I could glimpse them. I was just right, perceptive in my quiet way. She'd lied, not once in a panic, but repeatedly, with cold purpose, making me doubt my own sanity to cover her shame. Building something intimate with him, emotional or otherwise, behind my back, while feeding me silence and dismissals at home. And still, she had the audacity to scribble in that note, "You didn't let me apologize," as if her regrets weren't already tainted by omission. The sting wasn't just the infidelity itself, the betrayal that twisted like a knife in old wounds. It was the fact that even her guilt was edited, curated like one of her marketing campaigns, cropped at the edges to remove the ugly truths, filtered to appear sincere. Lena, realizing the bomb she dropped, whispered hurriedly, "Sorry, I didn't mean to unload that on you like this," but it didn't feel like an unloading. It felt like a key, cold and heavy in my palm, and now that I held it, I wasn't sure whether to lock the past away for good, sealing it in a vault of forgotten hurts, or to finally swing open the door to the full truth she never wanted me to see, to confront the shadows she'd cast over our life. I shattered the silence that very night, though I hadn't planned to. Back in my loft, the walls closing in with the weight of revelation, I stared at my phone for an hour, typing furious drafts, deleting them, retyping with more measured words. The final message wasn't meant to heal wounds or provoke a war. It was just a simple, direct sentence I needed her to read, to acknowledge, "You lied about Alex. I know now." I hit send, then turned the phone off immediately, tossing it across the bed like it burned my skin. No expectations of closure, no anticipation of a reply that could mend anything. But 30 minutes later, when I powered it back on out of morbid curiosity, my screen lit up like a fire alarm in the dark. 3 missed calls, 5 frantic texts escalating from denial to deflection, and then 1 voice memo, time-stamped just moments ago. I didn't listen to it right away. Instead, I stalled, made a simple dinner of ramen from a packet. The steam, rising like forgotten promises, swept the floor with deliberate strokes. Dust bunnies gathering like remnants of our life even wiped down the already spotless kitchen counters twice, the cloth gliding over surfaces as if erasing invisible stains. Anything to delay hearing what I already suspected. More excuses, more blame shifting. Eventually, with a deep breath, I hit play. Her voice filled the room, flattened and yielding, not the weepy, guilty tone I'd have expected, but defensive, edged with accusation, as if I was the one who'd reopened a wound she thought safely buried. "You left first, Mark. You gave up without a fight, without even trying to talk it out. And now you're digging through the past like it'll fix what you broke. Yeah, things got blurry with Alex. I'll admit that, but it wasn't physical. Nothing crossed that line. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who listened without retreating into silence like you always did. You never battled for us, never raised your voice or pushed back. You just folded every time, like a napkin at a dinner party." I paused the message there, my finger hovering, unable to stomach the rest. She still didn't get it, didn't see the irony. Folding wasn't weakness, it was survival in a marriage where every potential conflict was met with her dismissal or deflection. I didn't raise my voice because I was too busy wondering how to keep us from collapsing entirely, patching the cracks with quiet concessions. I didn't fight back because I believed loving someone meant giving them space, grace, even when they used it to build secret bridges to someone else, to carve out a life without you at its center. But the most brutal part wasn't her voice twisting the narrative. It was the final text she sent, right after the voice memo, popping up like a parting shot. "You think disappearing makes you seem noble. All it did was prove you never had a spine to begin with." That's when the truth crystallized, sharp and unyielding. She never truly missed me, the man, the partner, the person with dreams and flaws. She missed the control, the comfort of knowing I'd always be there in the background, quietly absorbing the damage, the emotional debris she scattered without thought. I wasn't equal in her eyes. I was a function, a routine she could rely on, a fallback plan when her ambitions or distractions left her hollow. With a soft sigh and tired eyes that had seen too much, I stared at that message for a long time, letting it sink in like ink on paper. Then, without fanfare, I blocked her again for the last time. Not out of spite or petty revenge, but out of mercy for myself, a gentle severing of the last thread binding me to that toxic tapestry. Because the truth was laid bare, her regret was never about losing me. It was about losing the version of me that let her get away with everything, that enabled her half-truths and hollow affections. I didn't reply to her again, didn't unblock her to fire back a retort, didn't even listen to the second half of that voice memo, the one that probably spiraled into more twists of guilt and manipulation. I didn't need to. I already knew how it ended. Another attempt to drag me back into the silence she'd filled with her secrets, her half-truths, her curated remorse. Instead, I stepped outside into the crisp evening air, the city lights twinkling like distant stars I'd forgotten how to wish on. It's funny how something as ordinary as sunlight, or in this case, the glow of street lamps, can feel unfamiliar, almost foreign, after living so long in the emotional shadows of a loveless routine. I walked without headphones to drown out thoughts, without my phone buzzing with notifications, just walked, letting my feet carry me through unfamiliar streets. A cozy cafe caught my eye, tucked into a corner with warm lights spilling out onto the sidewalk. The kind of place I'd have ignored before, always rushing home to her or retreating into my own isolation. But this time, with nothing pulling me back, I stepped in. The aroma of fresh-baked pastries and brewing coffee enveloped me like a hug hadn't realized I needed. There, amid the hum of quiet conversations and the clink of cups, I met someone. Not in a fairy tale way with sparks flying and orchestral swells, no. Nothing so cinematic. Just a soft hi from a woman at the counter, her smile genuine as she reached for the same muffin I was eyeing. We shared a laugh over the badly timed grab, and it blossomed into a conversation about forgotten dreams, the way certain songs can transport you back in time, and how life's small joys like a perfect latte can anchor you when everything else feels adrift. Her name was Mia, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she left, and a way of listening that made me feel seen for the first time in years. She didn't ask probing questions about where I'd been or what scars I carried. She didn't try to fix me like a project. She just shared stories of her own travels to far-off places, books that changed her perspective, and laughed with her whole face, a full-bodied joy that was infectious. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I laughed back, the sound rusty at first, but growing freer with each moment. I don't know where it's going, this tentative connection, these coffee meetups that have become a weekly ritual, but I know what's behind me, a chapter closed, a weight lifted, and I'm not walking backward anymore, not glancing over my shoulder at the ruins. Healing doesn't announce itself with fanfare or fireworks. It doesn't come neatly packaged with closure, permission slips, or a final, heartfelt apology that ties everything in a bow. Sometimes it starts quietly, with walking away from the toxicity and never looking back, even when the past screams your name through voicemails or memories. I was a shadow in my own marriage 4 years, a ghost haunting the halls of a home that no longer felt like one. Now, I'm alive in ways I forgot were possible. I speak up for what I want. One choose paths that light me up. I exist fully, outside of her version of me, the compliant one, the invisible one, and I think that's enough, more than enough. Thanks for hearing me out, for letting me spill this confession into the void where maybe it will resonate with someone else fading in their own story. And now, a question for you. What small act of kindness do you think altered history without fanfare, rippling out in ways no one could predict? Share below, we'd love your takes. You're tuned into End Stories, amplifying the unspoken,